Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Just make sure I the clicker right. All right. Okay, we're off to the races. Okay, again, good morning. I am Chris Lynam. I'm the Director General of the National Cybercrime Coordination Unit and the Canadian Fraud Centre at the RCMP. It's a great honor to be here. I'm not from down east here, but I spent a fair part of my early 20s in this area, and it's great to be back. So today I'm gonna kind of set the scene a little bit about cybercrime and what we're seeing and some of the trends and challenges that we're experiencing. And hopefully that'll help set the day in terms of discussions and what we're going to do about it. So I'll throw a few stats at you. I won't go into them in too much detail, but in reality, cybercrime and fraud, as we talked about, shows no sign of slowing down. These are the official Statistics Canada stats that are based on when someone contacts a law enforcement agency in Canada to report. These are 2021 data, and they get refreshed on a yearly basis, and the new ones are updated usually every September. So we should get a few more updates shortly. No jurisdiction is immune to this. And when you transfer to look at the economic loss side of this is the reporting we get from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. And this is, we estimate only 5 to 10% of what's actually happening out there. Last year, and you see the trend, was a record year, and we're already on pace this year to be another record, nearing $500 million of losses. If that's 10%, that's a $5 billion problem. So as we talked about in some of the speakers' opening comments, everyone and everything is a target. There's no sector in Canada that hasn't been attacked or attempted to be attacked. Individuals, whether it's your grandmother or big business or critical infrastructure, everything is a target. And I've just put a couple of headlines up here from these aren't that old. This is within the last year or so. Few other key stats. A big challenge and a big trend we obviously are seeing, which is in the news a lot, is ransomware. In last fiscal year, my unit became aware of about 380 incidents affecting Canada, had a nexus to Canada. And the graph at the bottom right, it's across every sector. It's not just targeting critical infrastructure. Healthcare is a big target. Cyber criminals are, and I'll get to in a second, both some of the most adaptive people, but some of the most unethical. They have no morals when it comes to who they're going to attack, whether it's hospitals, charities, or what have you. I thought one other stat I'd put up there, a little snapshot from about the last six months of the post-secondary education institutions that we're aware got attacked by either reported to us or we came across that information. And that's just in the last 6 months. So again, everything and everyone is a target. So just flash back to 2014 a bit. I just shared this incident. This was when in a lot of circles in Canada where cybercrime kind of really got put on the map. An individual who was able to get into a CRA system very quickly. And while there were a lot of complex, sophisticated cyber criminals in 2014 globally, this one was sort of, seemed to be, for Canada, okay, a little bit of a wake-up call. But at the same time, it seemed pretty simple, or in retrospect, it seems simple. He lived with his parents. He didn't really cover his tracks. Police were very quickly able to find out who was behind this and then proceed, which led to a prosecution. So jump forward to 2022. We often think of cybersecurity as a technical problem, and it is. There are absolutely technical aspects to it, but I would argue it's actually more of a human problem. We have highly adapted cyber criminals, and they are the ones who are launching these attacks or trying to find the vulnerabilities. They are primarily motivated either by financially or connected to state actors or are state actors themselves that for either espionage or other geopolitical reasons are there are humans behind this. And then on the other side, we have humans who are designing our software, our hardware, and what have you, who unintentionally or what have you are creating these vulnerabilities. And then we have people in the middle who it's very hard to convince them not to click on something. By human nature, we want to do that. And so it's actually it's more of a human problem that we're dealing with. And going back to the cyber criminal side of things, we see that the criminals behind this and the actors behind this, they are constantly adapting. We went from, for example, one of the top, the North Korean hacker headline there, we went where, the last couple of years, ransomware groups have been primarily targeting big organizations because they want the big payout. Well, the latest trend is, no, they realize they've maybe created a little bit too much of a splash and they want to get below the radar screen. So now they're going after smaller businesses or smaller organizations, which, maybe a little bit smaller payout, but it's not going to have that big impact that might draw more of the attention of law enforcement or others. You also have a trend where, groups might have been very cohesive in nature, and we still see that, and operating like a big business, having everything from, their own developers, their own internal security people, their marketing folks to get their product out there, and then someone to deal with the money on the outside. But then what you also have now is you have, and if we call it an affiliate model, where a group may break up, or you may have cyber criminals who work for multiple groups at the same time. So from a law enforcement perspective, very challenging to, going back to that human problem, is trying to figure out who these cyber criminals are and then find them and impose costs on them. And then I'll even add sort of one at the bottom right corner there, just another example of how adaptive they are. Moving towards using phone to help, launch their attacks. So in many respects, they're getting somebody on the phone and then convincing them in real time to click on something which is executing some kind of malware or remote access type application, and then they've got penetration of the system. So again, these are highly adaptive, unethical people. Okay, so what are we doing about it? So the National Cybercrime Coordination Unit, my unit, the NC3, created a couple years ago. We've been operational for a little over 2 years. Really has a mandate to work with law enforcement and other partners to enable them to reduce the victimization and impact of cybercrime on Canadians. And we do this across four main areas. One, we work with them to support their investigations, connect those investigations together, try and bring in other partners to those efforts if possible. We provide a lot of technical support and access to technology to those law enforcement partners. And third, we produce actionable intelligence, and that's a lot about, as I mentioned, trying to find who the cyber criminals are, produce the attributions that's necessary to either launch investigation or impose costs on them. And then finally, a big piece of our work is on public reporting. So the stats I provided earlier, they talked about, we think maybe 5 to 10% people report. Statistics Canada formally in one of their surveys found that about 10 to 12%. So really, it's very challenging to fulfill these mandates or these missions if you have a underreporting. So part of that is we've built a new public reporting system to make it much more user victim friendly, and then have the back end system to be able to use that data to achieve our mandate. So, keeping in the theme of this event, really the complexity of the environment that I just put out there, whether you have highly adaptive cyber criminals, the impact, the only way that police and others are going to be able to tackle this is through multi-sector collaboration. And I've just put a couple of examples up here of what we've done and where we need to go. One was a multinational effort against the Sodinokibi REvil group that involved police services here in Canada, in Europe, private sector partners all working together that led to arrests and the takedown of that infrastructure. No More Ransom. There's a, I'm not sure if people are aware of this organization. where they work on trying to get decryptors for ransomware, make them publicly available. They're vetted, tested, and try to help victims in that sphere. And then another project we're working on with the Global Cyber Alliance on a cyber flip book to help law enforcement and others up their skills. So, while we've done some good work to date, we still got a lot of work to do, and building partnerships is key to that. And this is why I love to come to these events, because I meet either new people or I deepen relationships I've had where it's got to be a collection of private sector, academia, law enforcement, public sector, all working together domestically and internationally to figure out ways how to reduce victimization. There's huge opportunities for proactive threat sharing. We often will get private sector entities or others who reach out to us and say, hey, we're seeing this attack go down in real time. Is there something you can do about it? And we're often able to then engage the victim, try and either warn them. Often they know about it, or it's just unfolded. And then if possible, try and connect them to other resources where the government can provide, such as the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and REvil will be speaking to you a little bit later, or other resources, for example, like No More Ransom. And then from an investigative perspective, work with them to be able to collect indicators of compromise, and again, try to find who's behind this and impose costs on them. And then there's huge other opportunities, research, particularly around prevention awareness. I talked back to that being a human problem. We collectively as a society need to figure out how do we make Canadians and others less vulnerable by not clicking on that. And I there's huge opportunity and work that needs to be done in this space. And I talked about public reporting. This is another area where collectively a lot can be done to help that information come in. That's that initial connection, particularly with individual Canadians, small or medium organizations, where by reporting, you open up a whole line of communication for assistance and further on prevention and awareness activities. And then I also just shared a couple of other activities that we're involved with. Europol is the Joint Cybercrime Action Task Force, is an incredible organization. When you think of sort of how you want law enforcement working together to tackle cybercrime, there's 18 countries, all with representatives, sit in one big room. Canada, we have two at the table there, and really trying to trade information, share information on threats and attacks. And so, that has been a huge enabler for us. And another on more the policy side, we took place in was the ransomware task force that got a whole bunch of stakeholders in the US, Canada, and the UK together and said, look, how are we going to tackle this from both the policy, operational, legislative aspects, and came up with some great recommendations to do that. So I'll end there. I'm not sure how I did for time, but I'm happy to take questions. I put a few contact information and some resources up there. So thank you very much. No, and I'm not sure how we're doing questions. I don't know if people are just standing up and asking. Or... Maybe I can ask who's asking the question, or
David Shipley. I'm with a local cybersecurity company here in Fredericton. I'm just curious about, all of us are here in the room. We're all concerned about the problem. We want to help our local MPs and others understand what we need. And you're right, it is a policing and private sector partnership, but policing can do so much more than what we can do. We can provide intelligence. You guys can take action with partners. So in the past, we've heard the numbers are pretty tight for the RCMP. So where are you guys at in terms of staffing? How can we help in terms of that conversation?
Sure. No, I appreciate that. I don't think there'd be any organization in the public sector, law enforcement, that wouldn't say, hey, if I could have more resources, I could do more. And I think that's aptly true in dealing with cybercrime. We're a unit of about 75 people. Fortunately, we did quite well in staffing up, particularly over COVID. Standing up an operational unit, COVID added a little bit of an extra challenge. But yeah, based on the stats that I've put here and what have you, we've collectively we all know we have to invest more in this. I'll note the government of Canada has its cybersecurity consultations that launched recently, an opportunity for Canadians and businesses and academia to say, hey, what do you think we need as a country to do to have a new cybersecurity strategy and approach, or an updated or enhanced. So there is that opportunity to go and say this is what I think is needed. So thanks for the question. Yeah. Morning, Brian.
Hi, Chris. Sorry, this is loud. Brian McDonald here. Great to see you back in Fredericton, Chris. We're used to seeing you here in camouflage, so it's nice to see you dressed up. There's been millions of identities leaked online, LinkedIn, all kinds of live labs. I mean, there's endless number of data breaches now. And I'm just wondering, there's some trends coming in Canadian banking. Payments modernization will mean that our Interact transfers will have no time delay and no cost limit. So the potential for, financial fraud is significant, especially when it's linked to these breached identities. What are you seeing in terms of identity fraud these days?
Yeah, no, good question. It is, unfortunately, it's still rampant. It's one of the top things that is reported. And one of the challenges is that all the data, a lot of the data that's already been stolen is out there, and cyber criminals are making greater use of that to then feed back into their attacks to make them to social engineer the new attack even better than it was before. So, unfortunately, that is a huge challenge. Really, it's, again, going back to the theme, it's got to be everything from the individual and doing as much as they can at their level to secure their data, to the institutions, the organizations that have it at a certain point. And then, law enforcement and others' perspective is we need to go and find these cyber criminals and impose costs on them. And we're having success of doing that internationally, where through things like Europol and with other allies is knowing who these groups are, and then going and taking down their server. And even if they're not, they're what country, that's imposing costs on them. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Chris,
Okay.
for that interesting talk and getting our day started.